I am James Gordon. I work with Pioneer Bank here. I don't get to work in this office. I work out of Mapleton. It's kind of like this, except it's smaller and about 50, 60 years older than this. So welcome to Pioneer Bank. If you haven't been here before, this is our room that's been basically built for the community. David Krause, our CEO, has mentioned a few times, since we've opened this up a few years ago, we've had over 200 community events in this spot. So this is one of them. So welcome. We're proud to do this for everybody. Hopefully all the IT and everything works out very well. But we're going to get this started. I'm just more of the greeting person, going to get you going. If you haven't noticed, we got a little bit of waters in the back for you over here. And then the bathrooms, if you have to use the restroom, there's no scheduled break, so feel free to go out towards the back. And the bathrooms are just in the back corner over here in the entryway. I'm on the GreenSeam Business Expansion and Retention Committee. So this is part of our baby. I work with Garrett and I work with Sam. The rest of the group that we've got, I saw a few of you. I am not Jim Heilman. I'm James Gordon again. We've got Wes Beck, Brent Meschke, myself, Annie Lerner, which Annie, I saw you were here. Tyler Petzel, Ryan Vesey, Jerry Kopel. Jerry, I think I saw you come in too. Yep, Tyler's here as well. And then Ryan Strobel is the group that we're part of. So welcome again. If you've got any questions, let me know. And I'm going to turn it over to Garrett for the introduction.
Let's see here. Attending our second event, the first event held in October, we think was a pretty resounding success. It wasn't asked, are you doing a next event? It's when are you doing a next event? And so GreenSeam's really excited to continue this motion and really share more about what a global workforce means for the region and how we can better support the business communities and individuals. GreenSeam, although is focused primarily on economic development, we do a lot of different work in the talent space. How do we work with universities and create those industry relationships? How can we help retain that talent and then develop them to support business throughout the region? What we find a lot in ag, and I'll refer to Sam as he says, there's more to food and ag than cows, sows, and plows. And when we think about food and ag and this new generation of workers, we need to showcase that if you want to be a farmer and you want to work in a barn and a tractor, that's great, and we can help you do that. But we want you to realize and understand that there's opportunities in business and technology, international marketing, whatever it may be. There's a place for everybody in food and ag, and so we're really excited to continue on that effort and brand and promote this region as a world-class epicenter for food and ag and opportunities. And so just another quick thank you to Pioneer Bank for hosting and allowing us to use the space, the Expansion and Retention Committee and the members, as well as the GreenSeam Board of Directors, the investors, and other supporters of the GreenSeam. Without that support, we'd have a pretty difficult time doing this. And so thank you, and thank you all for your dedication and contributions to the region. A few housekeeping items. The presentations today will be recorded, and so with speakers and such, if there's things that we don't want included in the audio and video, let us know and we can make that happen. But after that first event, people really wanted something to refer to and direct people to, and so GreenSeam will have that hosted on our website. A few things about the presentations. Unless a presenter finishes early and there's time, we are going to be moving at a pretty quick pace here today. Unless there's time, please save your questions for the end. Erin, speaking more on the legal perspective, does have to leave after she speaks, and so we'll have an opportunity for questions during that. Some of these topics really are known to become politically charged, and we ask everybody to be respectful and mindful, and quite frankly, keep politics out of the conversation. Let's focus on where we're going and what we can do as regional business and community leaders. During these presentations, I really challenge you to think about how you, your company, and community may welcome, incorporate, and accommodate a global workforce. I've had the pleasure of living with people from across South America and Mexico, and it truly is a rewarding experience when you can open your home, enjoy the meals, enjoy the culture, the music. Everything is quite exciting, so we're really excited to have Sergio today share more about his story and his journey here to where he now lives in Mountain Lake, working with Shorts Farms from Mexico City. And so let's get this wrapped up here. Let's share, learn, and grow from the mistakes and challenges that this region has experienced, and let's focus on the opportunities and the successes that we can work towards as we build a more vibrant and diverse region. So with that said, I will be introducing our first keynote speaker, Mr. Patrice Bailey. who is the Assistant Commissioner for the Department of Food and Ag, or Department of Agriculture, rather. After graduating with his bachelor's degree in agriculture education from Prairie View A&M University in Texas, he traveled to the Virgin Islands to learn about agriculture in the West Indies. His passion for feeding and clothing the world at large continued to grow, as well with each new life experience. He then received his master's degree in agriculture education at Iowa State, spent time in New York, and now we welcome him here as a Assistant Commissioner of the Food and Ag. And so we're excited to hear a little bit about Patrice's story and his experience as coming from a diverse background and as an African American into the state of Minnesota in the department. So please help me welcome Patrice Bailey.
Well, it is so great to be here. I was telling Tom Peterson, my boss, the commissioner, it's just so crazy of all the things that are happening. When you're thinking about things that are happening around the world. And so what I would like to do is talk about a little bit about my journey coming from Harlem, where I grew up, to where we are today, and sort of looking beyond today is sort of that the theme. So again, my name is Patrice Bailey. I serve as one of the 4 commissioners here at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And the way that the agency is sort of broken out, it's about 450 to 500 state employees. And there are 2 assistant commissioners that sort of split up 6 divisions. So I have sort of, seems like the bigger ones. I have feed and food safety, which includes all the breweries, the wineries, and manufactured pet food. I have dairy and meat inspection, and I also have ag marketing and development, which sort of has like 13 other things like Minnesota Grown and ag in the classroom, and all of those things is under my portfolio. So as you can see, my journey of New York is that the thing that you don't see, minus a few trees, is any land, right? In terms of agricultural land, everything is concrete, big buildings everywhere. And so the picture on the left is Harlem, and the picture on the right is still Harlem too. It's just that I wanted to sort of put that contrast there of the things that I see or saw in terms of perception. The next one. More things that are happening. This is 42nd Street. I don't know how much the light bill is for 42nd Street, but it's like this during the daytime with all these lights all the time. But it's a lot of hustle and bustle, and it's more of an on-demand type of economy in New York of 16 million people. And so I don't think that a lot of people really think or really care about where agriculture comes from in terms of their food, as long as it's right there on the shelf when they are buying their items. Next slide. So the question is, why agriculture, and what was it that sort of drew me in to agriculture? Well, you can go to the next slide. So it wasn't until my senior year, I had 6 months left. My mom said, "So what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to be a lawyer." And she said, "Well, there's too many lawyers out there. Why don't you do something that you can always feed yourself in any part of the world that you may happen to find yourself?" And I said, "Well, what is that?" And she said, "Agriculture." And I said, "I don't want to be a farmer." Next slide. I don't want to be a farmer because the stereotypes that I always have seen have been these stereotypes of tractors. And being that I grew up in Harlem, I didn't see tractors. We didn't see knee-high in July. We didn't see any apple orchards. And so my perception and stereotypes of agriculture was extremely negative. And she was like, "Trust me, you can't see it right now, but just go to Texas and give me a year. If you don't like it, go to law school." So next slide. So one of the things that I did that very thing. I went to Prairie View A&M University. It's historically black college and university. Is one of 13 historically black colleges and universities for agriculture and mechanical. And so my first trip was going to Chicago. It was the World Food Expo. And I saw Dan Glickman, who was the Secretary of Agriculture at the time. And I said, oh, wow, who is that? And started meeting a couple of people. Still, I had this negative connotation of agriculture until I walked through these doors. As I walked through the doors, the first thing that I saw was the glacier water. It was Coca-Cola. All the big names were right there, but these were the CEOs that were greeting you. And so I'm walking through, and then I see the Patrice Farm commercial guy. I don't know how many people remember this guy. His name is Charlie Welch. He used to be in this hammock, and he used to talk about how great Patrice Farm products were. I'm like, that's the guy. Oh my God, I can't believe it. So I spoke to him for an hour, and after I had that conversation with him, I was sold on agriculture, and I didn't look back since. And so we can go to the next slide. So one of the things that continue to happen, and we talk about the hands of time move very slowly. Well, they really do when you're thinking about it, because if you're thinking about agriculture in Minnesota, it's very white. So it wasn't until 2019 that that sort of cycle broke. And so thanks to Tom Peterson, that he didn't want the same old thing happening. He wanted to reach out to other communities. And so here we are, 136 years later. And this is where we continue to keep moving. But I have to say agriculture in Minnesota is in a good position. That's one thing I can say. But we still have issues when it comes to our emerging farmers. Next slide. So this is the team. It's Tom Peterson, there's Andrea, there's Peter Chesset, and myself. And so these are the folks that run the agency. And I was saying Peter, so I had those three. So with Peter, his three folks that the divisions that he managed is pesticide management division. He also has plant protection. He also has, we share a lab with the Department of Health. Sorry, they have more real estate than we do. But we're in the agriculture building, the Freeman building, named after Mike Freeman's dad, who used to be the Secretary of Agriculture during the Lyndon Johnson administration. Next slide. So the mission that we have is really to protect the food supply for 6 million people, 6 million plus. But even though this is our mission, in terms of making sure that the economy is strong, we do it with the budget is less than 1% of the state budget. So just imagine the surplus that we have is close to, I would say, close to 10 billion because we haven't received the American Rescue Plan money yet. So we do all of this work, and we have an amazing staff to do these things. So we do a lot of inspections. We do a lot of traveling to farms and making sure that we are making sure that everyone is being responsible and taken care of. Next slide. So about 3 weeks ago, I went to California for the Natural West Expo, which is the largest organic and food show in the world. So I was there, and it was great to see 60,000 people. But I also saw that it was $7 a gallon. And so I saw this, and I said, it is an arm and a leg. Because I was just gassing up the other day, and I was $4.09. I said, wow, $4.09. And that continues to go up. And you're thinking about the supply chain. So where is agriculture today? Next slide. So if you go to our homepage right now, this is what we're dealing with. front and center. Tom is up in Wilma right now with Andrea and the governor dealing with this high path. It's now in 15 farms are affected right now, so that's 500,000 birds and counting. We're actually doing better here than Iowa. Iowa is at 5 million and counting. And so the incident management team is working 24 hours a day to try to contain this. And so this has sort of been sort of the talk of what's happening at the legislature too, because coupled with this, prior to this happening, we were dealing with trying to get the drought package passed. And this is the drought from last year. And so Tom has been really working hard to make sure that they pass it now and not after they come back from the break. That starts today, their Easter break. But these are the type of things that are happening, and these are the things that are always top of mind when you're thinking about food safety. So next. So this is what you see, right? You see a lot of gabbling. You see a lot of people trying to work together. I know people have definitely seen a lot of issues around schools going on strike. And just the other day, Melissa Hortman was proposing to have $1 billion for all the schools, and the other side said, no, we gave you 30 million last year, and we don't have to give you anything this year. So we're going to still continue to work on that process, but I think the more money that we have, the more problems. It really is that way. Next slide. So the issue that we deal with, that I deal with quite a bit, is not just the black farmers, but since we have 11 tribal nations in Minnesota, you're dealing with those issues as well, and trying to make sure that farmers are being counted in terms of where they are in the state. So the last ag census was in 2017. The next one is in November of this year. And so you can go to the next slide. We always are trying to find out where are emerging farmers in the state. Now these green spots that you see are where a lot of the emerging farmers that are on the working group, this is where they're from. But as you can see on the western side of the state, it's pretty blank. And so one thing that we always have to deal with is where are the emerging farmers, but also the definition of what is an emerging farmer. You go next one. I would say that an emerging farmer is anyone that has 0 to 10 years experience. And most of the emerging farmers are located in the 7-county metro, mostly in Hennepin County, but they could also be in any one of these first 7. We try to make sure that when it comes to land, which is one of the number one barriers, that people know where the land is. And I was just having a conversation with Angela Connolly, who's the Hennepin County Commissioner, and she was telling me that they have land there. And I said, well, how much land are we talking about? She said, there's land everywhere in Hennepin County. And some land is 25 cents for, I don't know, the lot size is what I'm trying to get, but it's 25 cents. She said some is $20. I said, this is good. So I'm talking to these emerging farmers, and I told them that you have to take what's there, but the most important thing, you also have to be a part of these organizations. And so these are the stats. Again, this is from the 2017 census. So what I circled here was, if you're looking at Black, Indigenous, people of color, which also includes veterans and women entrepreneurs, this number is very startling if you're thinking about 11,000 farms in Minnesota. When it comes to dairy, we are less than 2,000. We're sort of under that 2,000 farm metric right now. But these numbers are pretty stark. The thing that I have grown to know is that There are lots of groups that have different emerging farmers, but not everybody is a renter and not everybody's an owner. And so that really sort of distinguishes the difference between the two. So my hope is that we actually increase these numbers 3 or 4-fold and really get a chance to actually see where people are and ways in which we can actually service everybody. You can go to the next slide. So again, so what is an emerging farmer? It really depends, because you can have someone that is here from Ukraine today and want to get into agriculture tomorrow. I would consider that person an emerging farmer because they have the interest of going from a consumer to a producer. So that's usually what we're looking for. Next slide. So in 2019, one of the things that I was charged to do was to put together an emerging farmer listening session. We did listening sessions. And these are just 26 of the many barriers that we heard of. And as you can see in the middle, it talks a lot about mental health, lack of insurance. And so it's not always finances and land, but it's also looking at student loan debt can actually prevent you from getting certain things. The farm business management program, or having a farm business manager in the metro, is something that we've been working with Keith Olander from Central Lakes College. So that is going to happen, hopefully in the next 2 weeks. But really trying to make sure that emerging farmers stay in the black. And so there's lots of different ways that we're looking at it, but trying to get people to be a part of having a farm advocate as a mentor. But these are just some of the barriers. Next slide. So if you're looking at in this particular slide is always bothered me, because if you're looking at racial inequality, you're looking at issues of equity, is really what it is, making sure that everyone has the same opportunities across the board. But if you're thinking about what's happening in the last 2 years in the pandemic, we've had more people that are out of work, sort of went out of the workforce, and now really trying to reclaim them to come back. And so in the ag budget, we actually proposed that we had a lot of rapid response grants, mostly in the Region 5 and the Region 9 part of the state, just to get more people to get back into agriculture. But housing and the supply chain, gasoline prices, and those are some of the issues that people are having to navigate right now in regards to inflation. And so we're in a very interesting time when it comes to agriculture. But again, we're in a good position in regards to agriculture here in Minnesota. So these were some images from the listening session. We did 6 of those around the state. And the listening sessions really were to identify what the barriers were at the time. So now that we have the Emerging Farmer Working Group, now we're in the spot where we know what the barriers are, how do we address them, which we're doing right now, but then what's the next step beyond this is sort of where we are. So tomorrow I'm going to join Lieutenant Governor up in Sandstone to look at a farm up there, because she wants to look at the farm and kind of see different ways in which she can help. You can go to the next slide, and then the next one after this. Sorry about that. Okay, so last legislative session, we actually received quite a few things, and one thing that we received was an emerging farmer office. No other Department of Agriculture, and I've spoken to quite a few, even have emerging farmers as part of their portfolio. but we do have one, and we're in the process of building that out and what those things look like. We had one hearing about this report, and so we're hoping that they put some money into some infrastructure for that particular office, but we're just building things out right now. So the things that are happening next and what's going on is we're doing promotional opportunities right now, developing sort of a working draft for the next 3 years, because this working group technically is supposed to sunset in 2025. We wanted to go into perpetuity and go beyond that. So, but these are just some of the things that we've been doing and working with different stakeholders. And we're working with trying to get a farm advocate to help emerging farmers as well. So, next slide. So these are some current opportunities that we've been able to do since the office was. It hasn't even been publicly announced yet, but we've had some really amazing opportunities to be able to reach out to Fond du Lac in terms of the certification program, White Earth. You'll be working with Hennepin County on some land issues, but really trying to expand. And the person that I hired for this particular, she's just an office of one. So I told her that you can't be everywhere. So you got to be creative of how you do it. But no, we've been really thankful that we've been trying to get the word out before it gets announced. Next slide. So we have to go, yeah. So this is the new agriculture license plate. It's the first ag plate in the state. And it's doing pretty well for as far as I know. I got my plate in the mail last week. But the great thing about this plate, and one of the things that I was sharing with Val Oswald and Jennifer Scusa, who are the FFA and 4-H leaders, is that you have to look beyond today, as the title of this presentation, because agriculture is changing as baby boomers are continuing to retire at a rapid rate. You have more people that are emerging, if you will. People are younger that are thinking about land transfer, and also some farmers are thinking about heirs. Some of their heirs don't want to take over the farm, so then what? And so the plate really has a credence to that. The thing that you don't see in the plate, and this is on purpose, is that you don't see the two logos of FFA and 4-H, even though they are the beneficiaries of the finances that come for this for programming, because they wanted the plate to be supporting agriculture for all, that wouldn't be a barrier, that people wanted the plate but they weren't a member of that particular, these two organizations. So that's the plate. It's available at any DMV right now. And please support these two organizations. And next slide is, thank you guys so much. If you take a picture of this QR code, hopefully it will take you to the Emerging Farmer Working Group webpage, which also has the meeting. We have our meeting this Friday. The working group meeting is available to all. But we really start to tackle some issues at each of the meetings. And this particular one, we're going to be, amongst other things, we're going to be talking about farm business management and the scholarship opportunities that are existing. Other than that, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. And if anyone has any questions.
We got time for a few questions. Let's give Patrice a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful, by the way.
Thank you.
My name's Amy O'Reilly. I work for the YWCA here in
Mhm.
Toledo. And one question I have for you, because we're always looking for
Yeah.
So what advice or words of wisdom do you give to young farmers or people who are like prospective farmers? What kind of wisdom would you share with them?
You know, one thing about, how many people know anything about Farm Fest? So Farm Fest, it's kind of like, I sort of think of it as the state fair for agriculture before the state fair. And this is sort of all the movers and shakers are there. One of the things that you don't see there is a ton of diversity, but one thing that happened last year, which was the first of my 3 years of going, is there being a lot of conversation about membership. How do we get more diversity within our membership groups? Farmers Union, Farm Bureau, Second Harvest. And so Farmers Union actually 2 days ago created a membership category specifically for emerging farmers and 16 and above. And the one thing that I always tell emerging farmers is that even though you don't have any land, be a part of these organizations because that's your lifeline into agriculture. If you don't have that, you won't really do well up here. And so, and if you are a member, you can still make the case that even though I'm a member, I still don't have land. So that could still be an issue that that could be top of mind. But those are the type of things I always say you have to be involved and increase your networks within these groups. Yes. But if you think of any questions, my contact info is there. And I just want to say thank you guys so much for having me. And if you have any need for the license plate, just go get it. Great opportunity. It looks good when it comes back with your information. So thank you guys.
Today we have Diane Bettine joining us from LB Pork, where she wears many hats. She is going to be talking about supporting a global workforce and your organization by utilizing different types of visa programs. There's not a one-size-fits-all, and that if one doesn't work, perhaps you can look at the next, and then you can look at the next. But Diane is the Human Resource Manager and Controller for LB Pork out of Northrop, where she recently celebrated 9 years. She wears a lot of different hats, ranging from her HR duties to managing the different types of visa workers, overseeing the financial accounting, and supervising the office employees. But she's been involved with the pork industry for many years, where she was the president of the Minnesota Pork Producers Association. She served on the National Pork Board from 2003 to 2009 and chaired the Domestic Marketing Committee from 2010 to 2012. She also served a 2-year term on the National Pork Board Nominating Committee and is currently on the NPPC Labor Security Task Force and remains active in her local and state pork organizations. A fun fact about Diane, both of her children are working in the swine industry. So please help me welcome Diane Bettine.
So you said, I've been working for LB Pork for 9 years. It's been a great opportunity. I didn't know anything about HR when I started there. I just knew a lot about the pork industry and knew a lot of people. But needless to say, I've learned a lot about it. They've been in operation since 1920, just celebrated 100 years. Century Farm had a big party, and it's a great family to work for. They got started real early with international workers because Lynn, who's one of my bosses, was a J1 trainee. Any of you that have had experience with visa workers, J1 is one of the visas that we use. He was a J1 trainee in Denmark. And so it kind of introduced him to the program. He came back to the farm, started farming with his brother, and that's how we got started. You can go to the next one. So we have had, right now I just brought in someone from Brazil, and he was our 159th foreign worker. We've had 6 continents, 21 countries. I don't think we're ever going to get to 7 continents, but we'll probably have some new countries. We just got Jamaica last summer, so we just keep trying new places and new people, and it's been a lot of fun. But you know, the next one. We're unique. I don't know how many of you know much about the pork industry, but LB Pork is a little bit unique in that we don't manage our sow farms. We manage all the wean to finish. So we we use a lot of our, we don't have a lot of contract growers. We do most of the labor ourselves. So we're a little bit backwards from what a lot of the pork operations are, but we also have a feed mill. We haul all our own pigs. We deliver our own feed. So we buy the corn. We do our own maintenance. We have a fleet of like 40-some pickups that these guys have running down the roads, which getting them their license is part of my job. But anyway, so that's kind of what the company does. 35 full-time workers. I think right now I'm at 36. 39 of the 39, 21 are U.S. citizens. 3 there with green cards. I have 7 green cards in progress right now. 8 currently on TN visas, 7 J1 trainees through MAS and CAP. And like I say, when I started in March 2013, I didn't know anything about visas or HR recruiting or any of that. So the next one. So we're unique. We have 3 houses for our foreign workers. We bring them in. They live in a house with 3 to 5 other guys. I keep like 6 in one house, another house 5, another house 5. They do have share room. We provide their housing, their utilities, their internet. We just charge them $75 a paycheck rent. And it really helps them out because for someone to come from another country and then all of a sudden have to find a place to live and all of that is really difficult. So being able to provide that for them helps them out. If they decide they want to bring their families, then we will help them find their own housing, et cetera. But in the meantime, they can stay in our housing as long as they like. They each have a pickup for work, and then there's also a car that they can share to go get groceries and such. But it's just for groceries. If they want to go out at night or whatever, they need to use a taxi or they need to get their own vehicle. We actually used to provide personal vehicles, and that didn't turn out so well. So we had to revamp that program. I do get them, I do get them all their Minnesota driver's license. They can drive for 2 months on their home country license. So I have 2 months to get them their Minnesota license, which used to be a lot easier. But now it's really hard to get an appointment to get the permit test without having Social Security. And generally, if they're flying in, I can't get an appointment to get them into the Social Security until 10 days to 2 weeks. So it's really 3 weeks in before they have their Social Security number. And then I can go online, get them an appointment. And then it all depends on how fast they actually can pass, which usually for most of them, passing the driving test is not difficult. It's that computer test. And it's available in 7 languages. So my Mexicans can take it in Spanish, the people from Colombia, but my Brazilians can't take it in Portuguese. My Ukrainians can't take it in Ukrainian. So I tell them before they come, I send them the link. I say, study, it's a hard test. Young people, they think, it won't be hard. So they come, they take the test, they fail. Then hopefully they study, and then sometimes they fail again, and then they have to start paying for it because you only get it free twice, and then they usually really will start to study. So it sometimes is difficult to get it done within the 2 months. But I take them, get their bank account, I do all of that, little stuff that, it's so hard for them to figure out. One thing that we are trying to do in Martin County right now, we had some grant money, and we're putting together a handbook in Spanish of just things in the community. Where do you go to get your driver's license? What are the phone numbers for the schools, the hospitals, all of that, a resource for some of these people. And I was talking to Sue, hoping she can help me out with some ideas on things we can do just to help ease them into the community. But for my guys, I don't have all Spanish speaking. I've had 7 different languages sometimes in our housing. COVID narrowed that down some because my availability of getting from different countries got narrower. But eventually I'll probably be back to having some Germans and Italians and whatever. Well, I guess I haven't had Italians, Spaniards, whatever it might be. So we do end up with about a 25% turnover rate, which is actually pretty low for our industry because the J1s can only be there for a year. Then they have to go back to their own country. But at least my turnover is planned turnover. I don't have people just not showing up for work. In fact, I have to tell my guys, you can't work so many hours. So that's really unusual in this day and age with workers to have to say, you know, not have to be begging for you to actually show up on the weekends. You know, they want to work. I have to say, no, you have to take every other weekend off. Anyway, next slide. So are any of you using visa programs right now? A couple of you? Okay. So we have used, right now we don't have H2As, but we have used all 4 of these programs. You can go to the next slide. So with J1s, so the J1 is actually a cultural exchange program. It's a government program. There's J1s here in lots of areas other than just agriculture. If you go to a resort and you see all kinds of people from other countries, they're probably here on a J1 or it wouldn't be an H2A, but on an H2 type visa, where it's a temporary visa where it's seasonal. A lot of them are J1s. They can come for anywhere from 3 months to a year. Once in a while you can get them on a program where they can come for 18 months, but it's so particular on what details make them eligible for how long they're here. Usually we have them for a year. The problem is that, I guess I'll get into that a little bit more later. And then there's also the H2a Visa, which that's an agriculture visa, but it's for seasonal and temporary workers only. So it's really difficult for pork producers and livestock farmers, dairy, to use the H2A because we're year-round work. So unless you have some things that can show that you have seasonality, it's tough to get that visa. And TNs are really, really popular in the pork industry. The TN is a NAFTA free trade agreement visa. It was developed then. It's between Canada, US, and Mexico. And they have to have a degree, a professional degree, in order to be able to come on a TN visa. So not just anyone from Mexico can come on a TN visa. They have to have that professional degree. Most of our TN visa holders have veterinary degrees in Mexico. It's not the exact equivalent as our veterinary degree, but they've got pretty much 5 years of schooling. And then we bring them in as animal scientists. With TN visas, there's a limited number of, there's limited professions that you can bring them for. An animal scientist is one. You can bring animal breeder is another one that a lot of the pork industry will bring TN visa holders in for. But then you can bring in engineers and scientists, and yeah, there's a list. Not quite sure how many are on it, but because I have only a narrow window I can work with. I'm working right now on trying to get one in as an automotive to help take care of our 43 pickups and semis and everything else going down the road, but we'll see. He has his interview at the embassy this week, so we'll see if he gets through. The TN visa paperwork is the easiest of all the visas to get. With the J1, you have to go through an agency. With the H2A, the paperwork is very complex, and so to try and do that on your own, it's really, they get sent back for a lot of different reasons, so it's really complex. The TN visa paperwork is easy. I do that all myself. A lot of people go through attorneys on that, but it's expensive, so I do it myself. But if you're getting started, you know, sometimes it's better to just have someone walk you through the process. The recruitment is what we had kind of struggled with. We've tried some outside recruiters, but right now what I'm having luck with is I've just got an employee from Mexico that's pretty good at getting on the TN Facebook pages and such, and he just gets on there and talks to people, and he talks to people back in Mexico, and he's been doing some recruiting for me, and that's been working out really well. And we also give a referral bonus to our current TNs that if they've got a friend, they bring them up. If they get so much money when they bring them in, and then they get more money if they stay 6 months. So, and the TN visa is generally, we apply for them all for 3 years. It's for up to 3 years. But sometimes, you know, at the border on their I-94, they'll just give them a year, and sometimes they'll give them 2 years, and sometimes they'll give them 3 years. So you really don't know until they get here how long they actually have. So, and I'm talking fast, I know, because I know Garrett's on a timeline. So if you need me to slow down, I will, but otherwise I'll just keep going. So I always request a resume. I set up a Skype interview. I always have a Spanish-speaking employee or whatever, Portuguese, whatever the language happens to be. I'll get one of my other workers to come in and translate for me. We explain the visa requirements and make sure they're eligible. And then if it's acceptable, I have them send me their info. And really, all it costs me to do a TN visa is $250 by the time I pay the visa fee and pay the postage. So it's actually really, really reasonable. Go ahead. So J1s, as I said, that's a cultural exchange program through the government. With the J1 program, you'll need to develop a training plan. And I think anybody can use this. This isn't just agriculture, and it's really been a really interesting program. It's kind of like having interns, only you don't have to have it as strict, to recruit interns out of colleges. Or sometimes you just have to really lure them in. These people are anxious to come to our country. They want to learn English. They want to experience the U.S. They want to learn about the industry. So they're just really ready to roll when they get here. So you just set up a training plan. Once you're set up with an agency, they send you applications to review. You look them through. You pick them out. I Skype with them. And then we sign the documents. And then the agencies we go through charge a placement fee and then a monthly fee of $75 while they're at your operation. The trainee is responsible for their own travel and their own insurance. The reason for the insurance is they are required to have a certain type of insurance. So CAP, MAS, they all have insurance that they offer that the trainee can buy because they have to have, so that if they're sick, they can get shipped home, those kind of things. So you don't have to provide them insurance. They're normally there for up to a year. And then your responsibility is to teach them about the industry and then give them opportunities to learn the language and the culture. And we really do follow the guidelines of the program. It's not supposed to be just cheap labor. It's not supposed to be you're just bringing these people in, you got them for a year, you stick them in a place and they don't get to do anything, they don't get to experience anything. We've got a bowling party tonight for all our employees. We have company parties, we take them to sporting events. We really do try to get them, all of our employees, to be active in the culture and really want to be here. Okay, go ahead. The H2a Visa, so this is the one that's seasonal labor. We don't have an H2a right now. We used to utilize them for our crops. We're really, really hoping, and I know we're not supposed to talk politics, but I'm not talking one side or another. I'm talking all of them need to work together to get us a visa that will work for year-round livestock. There's a horrible shortage of workers in agriculture right now, and a new H2a visa would be huge for all of livestock. There's one that's been proposed, and we can't get anybody, imagine this, to come together to actually talk about it and get it done. So that would be a federal thing. So if you have federal legislators, you get a chance to talk to them. Really put in a good word for this visa because it's desperately needed out there. We use an agency, Global Workforce, in Fergus Falls to do our H2a paperwork. That's a sister company to CAP, which is where we got our J1s. That's how we got involved with them. And we would bring them from February 1 to December 1, but sometimes you'd apply for them to be there at February 1, but by the time they'd get appointments and get everything, sometimes they wouldn't get here until April, May. I mean, you never know, really. So it's really hard to plan when you're counting on these types of visas, and they get tied up in gridlock in the embassies, et cetera. And that happens in Mexico too. Right now there's a problem. We have a lot of Mexicans that come from Monterrey. They can't get an appointment in Monterrey. I've got one of my TNs is back in Mexico right now trying to renew. He's from Monterrey. He couldn't get an appointment in Monterrey till August, so he had to fly to Merida, which is down by Cancun, to get his appointment so he can get back to us. And you can do renewals stateside, But the paperwork, again, can be it's much more complicated paperwork to do a renewal stateside than it is just to go back to Mexico and do it there. Plus, they want to see their families. So generally, most of the time, our guys have went back to Mexico to do it. But with the delays in the embassies right now, it's really a problem. And we ran into that with J1s during COVID. I mean, we were really stretched for workers during COVID because none of these embassies were open. We couldn't bring J1s, period. We could get TNs out of Mexico, but the embassy issues were a problem. It really was a struggle, but now we're starting to get back up to our normal quotas of people. So anyway, we really like the H2A program, but we need something that's year-round. It is the most expensive of all the visas because you have to pay their plane fare. You have to provide free housing. You can't charge them anything for the housing. And then you have to pay a designated wage. You can't pay anyone else. Basically, you really can't pay anyone else less than you pay them, or you can get in trouble with DOL. And then there's visa fees to Department of Homeland Security, the placement fees, and monthly fees to the agency. So it's the most expensive of our visas. The thing that we like about it is it lets us bring back former trainees and people that maybe came on a J1 and now can't come back for 2 years, because with the J1s, once they go back to their country, usually they can't get another J1 visa for 2 years. You really like the guy, but you can't get him back. So we've used the H2A, bring them back, put them in the cropping operation, but we've just decided right now it just isn't fitting very well. So next. So the Labor Security Task Force that I'm on, there's a number of pork producers from around the country. They're involved. It's through MPPC, and we work on different issues, mainly talking about trying to get this new visa. And then, if there's any opportunities within the current H2A program, green card opportunities, those types of things, we discussed that. Next. And these are kind of old slides. I had them in here from another talk, but it just kind of shows the low unemployment rates in agriculture areas where there's a lot of pork production across the country. Shows why it's so difficult for us to get labor. You look at Martin County, we're the #1 pork producing county in Minnesota. We're about number 6 in the country, and we have very low unemployment rate and not a lot of people that are interested in ag labor, even though we're an ag area. So it is a struggle. Go ahead. So this Farm Workforce Modernization Act would allow for 3-year visas instead of the 10-month limit. And right now there's a cap in some things that hopefully they would be able to work out in conference committee. It passed, I believe it passed one, I think it passed the House, but it hasn't been heard in the Senate, and who knows when it'll happen. And then it simplifies a lot of the processes, and we just keep crossing our fingers, but I don't know. I just don't seem to see much progress. Go ahead. So what works about the visa labor, they show up to work every day. They rarely call in sick. I have to tell them, like I said, I have to tell them you can't work so many hours. We can only afford to pay so much overtime. We do let them work overtime, but we got to put our foot down somewhere. We get to bring young people from around the world. We see different skill sets and work habits. It's kind of fun to see, it's like, okay, so I'm a stubborn German. It's kind of fun to see the different attributes that you see in the different cultures. We have a really good time. I have my J1s. Some of them will come and you can tell when they're from a country where money is a real issue, because they'll save and go back with so much money because they live in our housing. They don't have to spend a lot of money. And then usually it's the Brazilians come and they go back with less money than what they came with because they're having a darn good time. So it's a lot of fun. But again, it's planned, and then the TN program, like I said, it's easy to use. It's just a matter of finding the people. Okay. The problems we struggle with, embassy issues, politics, like I said, No guarantees that the people you interview will actually make it here. Sometimes it seems like the reasons they get turned down make no sense. I had a young man from Brazil that had been trying to get here on a J1 for a year and a half during COVID. He actually traveled to Chile to see if he could get in through a back door. They sent him back to Brazil. And then he got turned down at the embassy in Brazil because they said he didn't have enough home ties that he'd want to go back. We had a wife in Brazil that was staying there. So I think it was just the person at the embassy that day was having a bad day. And you know, you deal with those things that are just really disappointing. And then getting back the good ones, like I say, we'll have guys come that we just fall in love with them, and then you have to say goodbye after a year, and you can't get them back for another 2. And that's really sad, especially when they want to be here. Housing, most of the time everyone gets along. Usually what I deal with is I'll have, you know, you have the mix of the neat freaks and the not so neat freaks, and then they don't always get along. And I always tell them, it's like, you guys are adults, figure it out. If you can't figure it out, okay, come talk to me and I'll talk to the house. But, you know, sit down at the table and do a schedule or something and figure it out. And then we have had a few culture clashes, but really very few. You know, I tell them all that when I Skype with them, that, you know, you're going to be living in a house with a bunch of guys from other countries. Are you okay with that? And of course, they all say yes. But it's always interesting. I have almost everyone that comes to me when I'm going through the rules on, you know, drinking and driving and smoking in the houses. And it's like, oh, I don't drink. Oh, I don't smoke. And then the next week you see them out and they got a beer in their hand and they're sneaking out the back door to have a cigarette. You know, it's like, okay, you don't have to lie to me. I'm just telling you, you can't drink in our vehicles. You can't smoke in our houses. I don't care what else you do. But, so it's funny. You can't always go by what they tell you. One of the biggest problems we have is we require that they learn English, because we have so many different cultures. I'm not like a sow farm where they can go and they have a manager that's bilingual and they can speak Spanish most of the time at work. They have to be able to communicate. One of my wean to finish managers is Ukrainian. He doesn't speak Spanish. One of my wean to finish managers is Portuguese. Is Brazil, so he speaks Portuguese, which transfers over a little bit, but it's just, we tell them all before they come, they have to learn English. Some of them work hard at it. Some of them don't seem to work at it at all. And that's probably our biggest struggle. And then I talked about the driver's license issues. Another one of our biggest struggles is the families. So we encourage them to be able to we want them to bring their families, we want them to be happy. The problem is when someone comes on a TN visa or an H2a visa, the spouses and the family members can't work. And I think that's a lot of what people don't understand is they see these families and they see the women not working and they think, well, why aren't they working? Why are they, you know, they're getting this, they're getting that, but they could be, but they can't work. They don't have a work visa. So that complicates it in the fact that, for one thing, we all know how difficult it is in this country to live on one income. Most people that grow up middle class, we got both people working if you want to have a really good quality of life. So they're limited to one income. 2, it's harder for them to assimilate into the community because they're not out working. So they're not out making friends. They're not out, you know, it's harder for them to learn English because they're not out in the community. They can get a driver's license. They just have to, you don't have to have a social security number to get a driver's license. You do have to have a valid visa. Well, they're coming on a valid visa. It's a TD or an H4. So they can get a driver's license, but they can't get a job. So that's our biggest frustration. And then lots of times what we'll do for our TNs is we'll get them a green card, because then the family gets a green card and then the families can work. But that's a lot of money. Right now, green cards are costing me about $15,000, the last few I've been working on. Prices have went up after COVID. And it seems like we run into, we need a J1 waiver, or we need this, or you want to do premium processing, you know, to speed things up because everything's so slow. And so it's a big investment to do the green card. And we do with the J1s and people we want to bring back from other countries, we do it because it's our only way to get them here. With the TNs, we do it more for quality of life for their families because it's not expensive for us to bring them back and forth. It's not difficult for us to bring them back and forth, but it's just really hard for the families. And lots of them will just come and leave their families back home. Well, that's not very good for their quality of life either. So then the other problem we have is lots of times, even though we get the green cards, we do whatever we can, the spouses just really want to be by family. So we've lost a number of really good workers because we had a 20-year employee from Brazil that his wife just didn't want to be in cold Minnesota anymore, and they went back to Brazil, you know. So that's a struggle sometimes, is you've transplanted these people into a new culture, a new environment, a cold environment, and so keeping them happy, sometimes it's not just keeping them happy at work, it's them having a happy life all around. And that's why the community programs and things can be so important, because involving them in the community and making them feel comfortable would make a big difference, I think, for a lot of them. And like I said, the green cards are a long and expensive process. I'm trying to get some Filipinos right now. We really like the Filipinos. I've got one that he's been eligible for his interview since last June, and he can't get, basically he gets his interview, he could be here in 2 months, but he can't get his visa, his green card interview, because the embassies are so backed up. So they just sit there, and it's a struggle. Go ahead. But why it's all worth it, work ethic, they have great work ethics. They're amazing people. I really enjoy learning about the different cultures. It's really nice if you want to travel. I did a little trip to Germany a few years ago and popped around and visited some of the farms of some of our past German J1s. That was really interesting. The team becomes a family, since most of them don't have family here. They said we got almost all our employees are going bowling tonight. And then I had a gentleman who does a lot of TNs and different recruitment asked me one time when I was speaking on this, you know, what I liked about our foreign workers, and mostly then we had J1s, we didn't even have many TNs. And I said, well, I get to be mom to a bunch of great young people. And then he said, well, what don't you like about it? And I said, I have to be mom to a bunch of young people, because sometimes having to be bad cop, you know. But it is what it is. It's really been a great experience all around, and I just wish it would get a little easier. But that's about all I have. And you want questions later, right, Garrett?
Yeah, if you're sticking around, it'd be great.
Yep.
To write down your questions, and then we'll it's like I'm drinking J1s and H2As, and what's a TN from this, and it's like drinking through a fire hose. And fortunately, we have a speaker here with us today that presented our first event virtually to talk a little bit more about the different types of visas, where they apply, some of the costs, timeline, structures to go along with that. But before I introduce Aaron, I'd like to mention Ashley Lieberman on a video with GreenSeam talked about how cool it is when competitors in the industry can all come together and work together towards a common goal, and how amazing things can happen when doing so. You know, we focused a lot on the swine industry because that's what southern Minnesota has really built up the last 25 to 30 years. There's been a lot of challenges. As Joe talked about in that first session with the communities that he's been a part of, St. James and Medelia, it has not been easy. But they've learned a lot along the way. And part of what we're doing here by bringing all of you together is to learn about some of these case studies and some of these examples of, oh, that's something that might make sense, or maybe Diane's a resource for me, or maybe what's happening in this community is a great thing. It's one step in the right direction. And so thank you, Diane, for spending your time with us and sharing more about LB Pork and your story. Erin Schutte-Wadzinski has an interesting story of her own, returning to Worthington. Erin's going to share a story, really talking about the pathways to a green card and citizenship, learning how to navigate that complex system of immigration law. Although this may not be directly focused on the TN and H2As and requirements as industry, please do use her as a resource as she is located in fairly close proximity. She is an immigration attorney and owns Kivu Immigration Law in her hometown of Worthington, Minnesota, where she returned. Erin earned her bachelor's degree from Yale and her law degree from the Yukon School of Law. After working for 6 years in Yale's Office of International Affairs, she returned home to Worthington in 2018 to start her legal career in immigration law. Worthington's pretty heavy in a global workforce as well. She received the Initiator's Fellowship to launch Kivu Immigration Law, a social enterprise law firm that provides full representation of immigration-related legal matters for immigrants, their families, and their employers. Kivu Immigration Law is located in downtown Worthington and also serves clients virtually across several states. We're excited to have Erin and her husband move to Worthington and to apply her efforts and to really work towards the noble cause of helping and supporting this global workforce. So please help me welcome Erin.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I just want to say thank you to Garrett for the invitation today, and it's so lovely to be part of an in-person event again. I feel like it's been a while. For those of you who don't know, Worthington is in the very southwest corner of the state. It's in Nobles County, so far bottom, second to the left county, about an hour and a half from here. What my bio doesn't say is that I grew up on a farm. So here I am as a kid. I grew up on a farm with pigs and cows and horses, and we grew corn and soybeans. And so this venue or these topics are really near and dear to my heart. There's a nexus between agriculture and immigration. And that's very apparent based on what Diane has shared with us today. Visas can be a bit of like alphabet soup, and we're hearing a lot of different letters thrown out. And what I hope to do in the next half hour or so is to zoom out and talk about how these foreign worker visas fit into the larger scheme of immigration law. So that way, if you work with foreign workers, you may be able to gain better insights into where they fall in this like murky realm of immigration. Next slide. So we're going to cover just a general overview of the U.S. immigration system. Like I said, we're going to zoom out. I agree with absolutely everything Diane said. It really seems like LB Pork is a leader in using a wide range of visas to really meet their needs in all levels of employment. So I applaud Diane and all of her efforts in navigating that complex process. I'm also going to provide just a few tips and suggestions on how employers can support immigrants in navigating their immigration journeys, whether that's in the employment-based track of immigration or perhaps in the humanitarian or family-based track. Next slide. So let's talk about American citizenship. If you are born in the United States, you are an American citizen. But if you were not born in the United States and did not derive citizenship from one of your American parents, you must obtain a green card, such as this one, in order to become a U.S. citizen. So this is an example of today's current green card. It's actually a little bit green, but next slide. An older one, and you can kind of just flip through these quickly, are all examples of permanent resident cards. This one here, the last one, is from the 1980s, and you'll notice that it doesn't even have an expiration date. So I have clients who have come to my office with a green card like this, and they've been permanent residents for like 40 years, and now they're ready to apply for citizenship. And I ask, why now? Why not 35 years ago? Half your lifetime ago. but I'm just glad that individuals are choosing to take that very last step in their immigration journey to become American citizens. Next slide. So, how to obtain a green card, because that is a required step in order to be able to apply for citizenship. You can obtain a green card through 3 different pathways: family-based immigration, employment-based immigration, and humanitarian-based immigration. And I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those tracks. Next slide. So family-based immigration is for individuals who have a family member who's a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident. So that relative is going to be like the arm that will be able to bring them here or help them obtain that permanent residency card. Next slide. So with family-based immigration, there are kind of 2 different processes. There's one process for immediate relatives and another process for non-immediate relatives who then fall into a preference category. So basically the closer you are to that in relation to that U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident, the faster it's going to be able to obtain that green card. So immediate relatives are spouses of U.S. citizens, children under 21, and parents of U.S. citizens. If you don't have that mom or dad or child over 21 or that spouse, you don't have an immediate relative. And if you have a brother, sister, or a lawful permanent resident, husband or wife, then you'll fall into a preference category. Sometimes it doesn't really matter if you are an immediate relative or permanent or in a preference category, but with a preference category there are sometimes backlogs because your relationship to the petitioner, the permanent resident or U.S. citizen, puts you in a relational category. So for example, there's a category of brothers and sisters to U.S. Citizens, and there's a certain number of green cards each year given out to brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens. Now there are more brothers and sisters applying for green cards each year than there are numbers of visas available. So there's like a backlog that is like 20 years long right now for brothers and sisters to be able to get green cards. It's crazy. But if you have an immediate relative, say you fall in love with an American citizen and the American citizen can petition you as an immediate relative, that whole process can take just 1 to 2 years before you have a green card. So it varies drastically based on your relationship with a permanent resident or U.S. citizen. Here's an example. And because this is so complex, I like to give some kind of hypotheticals, so hopefully you can follow along a little bit. John was born in the United States. John's best friend is named Max. Max is from Mexico. Max introduced John to his sister Mary when Mary visited Max in the United States. Mary is a citizen of Mexico and entered the United States on a B1, B2 visitor visa that she received from the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. When she entered the United States, she was only planning to stay for 2 months. Mary and John fell in love in the United States and they can't imagine living apart. They get married in the United States. Now, can John submit a family petition for Mary? Is Mary eligible to adjust status in the United States? I'm seeing some nods. Yes. Anyone brave to tell me why? Why you think yes? Okay, maybe you'll be brave for the next example, but you can go to the next slide. So we know that Mary has an immediate relative because she is now married to a U.S. citizen. Next slide. And she has a lawful entry into the United States, which is really important when it comes to applying for a green card in the United States. We know she has a lawful entry into the United States because she entered on a visitor visa. And even though a visitor visa cannot have, you can't have the intent to move to the United States when you come just for a visit, if something happens when you're in the United States that changes your intent, it's generally okay. So she's got that immediate relative, she's got that lawful entry, and unless there are other details in this example that we don't know, she's probably able to have her husband petition her and have her submit that green card application, which is called adjustment of status in the United States, all in one big step. So, good for Mary. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about employment-based immigration. Now, many of the visas that Diane was talking about are temporary foreign worker visas, meaning that they generally do not provide a pathway to permanent residency, but instead are meant for someone to lawfully work in the United States for a particular duration of time. Now, permanent employment-based visas are visas that are, instead of having that family member as the arm to bring someone to the United States, there's an employer doing that job. So basically substitute the family member for an employer, and it's a very similar process. Next slide. In order to qualify for an employment-based green card, you have to fall into certain categories and meet certain requirements. The higher the level of education or the higher level of specialty, generally, the easier it is to obtain an employment-based visa quickly. In this region, we see employment-based visas in the second and third categories, those who hold advanced degrees, or those who are skilled workers with some level of experience, or at a minimal, a college degree. And there are annual limits for how many visas are available for these types of green cards, but they're a more confident way to proceed in comparison to an H2a visa, which is a lot of legwork as well, but is not permanent in the long run. So when someone is really serious about an employer, they will often take those steps, which can be lengthy and expensive, but ultimately will sponsor an individual who they are very confident in for that employment-based green card. You'll notice that there are a few details here that I'm not touching on significantly, but if you do know anyone who wants to invest nearly $1 million in a business, they could probably buy their green card that way. So we generally don't lead with that, but there are ways called through an EB-5 visa, which is like an investor visa. Okay, next slide. So let's talk a little bit more with an example here. Joshua works at Porky Farms in the United States. Joshua is a lawful permanent resident and has twin siblings, Kate and Mike. Kate and Mike are citizens of Mexico. They both speak English, have bachelor's degrees in animal science, and several years of relevant work experience. 7 months ago, Mike came to the United States without inspection and is living with Joshua. Kate has never been to the United States. Can Porky Farms sponsor Kate or Mike for an employment-based visa? Yes, you're brave.
Yeah, I would say yes to Kate, but no to Mike.
Why?
Because Kate hasn't come yet, but Mike came unlawfully.
Yes. So Mike has a little blemish in his immigration history because he has an unlawful entry into the United States. And without a lawful entry into the United States, you are not eligible to adjust status or apply for a green card in the country. I could lead a seminar on the few exceptions to that rule, but we're just going to go with that rule for now. Yes?
Can we do questions So what if they came, so what if they're here, I forgot how I was gonna word this. So what if he went back and then they applied, they don't even know, if they don't know he's here without inspection, he went back to Mexico, then could he reapply?
So technically, once you've been in the country for more than 6 months and have accrued more than 6 months of unlawful presence, you trigger a 3-year bar when you return to that country or when you leave the United States. So technically, he would not be eligible to return to the United States for 3 years. And if he stays for a year after having entered without inspection and doesn't apply for any forms of relief, then he will be subject to a 10-year bar for re-entering. So if you overstay or like accrue 6 months of unlawful presence, it's a 3-year bar. If you accrue 1 year of unlawful presence, it's a 10-year bar. Very, very severe forms of punishment. So, yeah, Mike has an issue with being in the United States and having entered without inspection, but Kate probably can. She probably could be petitioned for an employment-based green card if Porky Farms wanted to do that. What other options might either of them have?
Get married to a citizen?
Okay, so Mike could do that. Mm-hmm.
Would he have trouble then with a family-based visa if he had the illegal time here, or do they just kind of ignore that then?
So Mike would have to return to Mexico for his green card interview, because without a lawful entry, you cannot get a green card in the United States. So he would face that bar unless he would get a waiver. If he's married to a U.S. citizen, he would be eligible for a waiver, but his wife would have to explain what kind of extreme hardship she would face if he had to serve that 10-year bar. It gets complicated very quickly. So, entries without inspection and unlawful presence is really tricky to work around. And that's intentional with the way the system is created. Next slide. Oh, can you go back? Oh, no. Okay. So, okay, next slide. So we got a little ahead. Consequences of unlawful entry. So you cannot apply for adjustment of status in the United States. You must return home to consular process, which is that interview at the U.S. Embassy. You're subject to a 3 or 10-year bar, potentially. And that waiver that I mentioned is called an I-601A waiver, where you need a qualifying relative to prove extreme hardship. And only spouses and parents are qualifying relatives. Next slide. So Kate may be eligible for an employment-based green card. Next slide. And also, Kate may be eligible for a TN visa. So the employer could consider a TN visa maybe before the petitioning her for a green card if the employer didn't want to make such a big investment and see whether Kate and the company were a good fit for each other. Next slide. Here's a list of professions that qualify for a TN visa. So Diane mentioned that there was a whole bunch of different types of professions that count. So not anyone from Canada or Mexico can come to the United States. You do have to have proper education credentials, which is generally a bachelor's degree in one of these fields. Okay, next slide. Let's go back to Mike for a minute. He's not eligible for adjustment of status through the employment-based or family-based track. He's kind of up a creek because he's accruing unlawful presence. But does anyone have any idea of what he might be eligible for? Okay. Pardon?
Refugee status for one reason or another?
So with refugee status, it's tough because you have to be designated a refugee in a third country, which would have to have happened prior to coming to the United States. But you're on the right track, because if he fled Mexico, we don't know why he's here, right? Why Mike is in the United States. If he fled Mexico because he had experienced violence or harm or threats, he may have been escaping persecution. And that is a ground for asylum. So asylum, like asylees and refugees, have to prove that they have been persecuted based on race, religion, national origin, political opinion, or a particular social group. So you'd have to know more about Mike to know whether he might be eligible for asylum. Asylum seekers must apply for asylum within 1 year of arriving to the United States. So Mike has been here for 7 months. He needs to start acting on it if he's going to apply for asylum. Now, once you submit an application for asylum to the United States government, you are claiming persecution in your home country. And the process for having your asylum case heard, typically by an immigration judge and sometimes an asylum officer, it will probably take years given the extensive backlog in cases. So the federal government states that while asylum seekers are waiting for a decision on their asylum case, they can apply for work authorization. So 6 months after that asylum application is sent to the government, the asylum applicant or asylum seeker can apply for work authorization and get a work permit. And that's when they can go legally work in the United States for Diane or some other employer. And that's something that is really a game changer for many individuals who fled their home country due to persecution and are just seeking refuge, and to finally be able to achieve even a little bit of stability by being able to legally work in the United States. Like, it makes a big difference for the families, and it also makes a difference for our communities because it is expanding our local workforce. I represent a lot of asylum seekers, and so I see the difference on a individual basis, day by day, and it's one of the very rewarding parts of my work. So, you can next slide. Next slide. Other types of humanitarian track types of immigration benefits include a U visa, a T, so we haven't escaped alphabet soup forever. T visa, U visa, and VAWA. The VAWA stands for Violence Against Women's Act, even though it's protection not only for women, it's for individuals who have been a victim of battery or extreme cruelty committed by a U.S. citizen or permanent resident spouse, or former spouse or other family member, basically a household member. A T visa is for victims of trafficking, either sex trafficking or labor trafficking. And it's good to remember that trafficking relates to someone crossing a border. So crossing a border for sex work or to be exploited by an employer. A U visa is more common than you might think. It's for individuals who have been a victim of a crime in the United States. And the type of crime, there's a list of what are qualifying crimes, but it ranges from like domestic violence to stalking to blackmail and things like that. And so those victims had to have been a victim in the United States to qualify for a U visa, which is different from asylum, because asylum, you're focusing on what happened before you came to the United States, and a U visa is something for victims that have been a victim of something bad in the United States. All of these types of applications do lead to permanent residency and U.S. citizenship if successful. And because they are part of the humanitarian-based track, they are eligible for adjustment of status in the United States, even if they don't have a lawful entry. So that's something that separates humanitarian track cases from family or employment-based cases. Next slide. Here's just a list of legal resources, trying to preempt some questions here. So I represent both individuals and employers on immigration-related legal needs, but it's not always necessary to have an attorney. Many individuals and many employers file applications pro se, where they represent themselves. And for individuals who find the process a little bit too complicated for comfort, then there are some nonprofit organizations that can be resources, or attorneys who are in private practice. Attorneys' fees can get steep very quickly. One of my efforts in establishing Kivu immigration law as a social enterprise is to try and balance between being a private attorney in private practice, but then being accessible to individuals who are working class to lower class, new arrivals to the United States, and making sure that fees are accessible and affordable for all of them. So it's an interesting business model that has its own struggles, but one that has been working well for the past couple of years that I have been in business. Next slide. Okay. So, do we have time for any questions?
Sure do.
Okay. Yeah. So the general rule is that you must apply for asylum within 1 year of entering the United States, not within 1 year of falling out of status, but from arriving into the United States, or in other words, escaping your persecution. And the government will still receive an asylum application for individuals who apply after that 1 year filing deadline, but there's going to be an additional burden for the applicant to prove, and that burden will have to be to prove that there have been extenuating or changed circumstances in the home country, which makes them now fearful of returning, because now they fear that they will be persecuted, even if within that 1 year of arriving to the United States, they didn't fear that persecution. Does that make sense? Yeah. They're going to go through, so the applicant, the immigrant, will go through a very rigorous vetting process where, for any type of immigrant application that they're going to submit, they're going to be asked about their immigration history. Like, how many times have you entered the United States? What is your address history for the last 5 years? And when you sign the form, the applicant is signing that they are being truthful and providing accurate information. So that is expected of them, that they will disclose that information to the government. They will also likely have an interview with an immigration officer at their home U.S. embassy, where the officer may even ask for proof of residence during a certain period of time. So either employment or school records from their home country, maybe tax records, or another thing in the past couple of years, the government has started looking at people's social media accounts. So the government will be able to see where you've been posting your pictures and stuff like that. So, it's hard to hide from the government. And, if individuals are trying to not disclose any presence in the United States, they're not the individuals that are coming to my law firm for assistance, or at least not to my knowledge. But I think it's very tricky to do. Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me.
It's only fitting that we talk about banking, because at our first session in October, Victor talked about I was expecting to make $500 and now I'm only getting $300. What's going on? And I've had always been traditionally paid in cash in Mexico. What are taxes? What's going on? I don't like to put my money in a bank account because the Mexican financial system wasn't as trusted. And so Pioneer Bank and 4 lovely ladies will be talking a little bit more about what that process is like for employers and some of the different creative solutions that community banks are able to offer as they navigate that space and to, again, provide value to our global workforce as we ensure a safe, welcoming, and stable environment. So I will introduce, let's see, on my other side here, we have Jennifer Mathstad, we have Jasmine Flores, Daisy Manriquez, and Sarah Alberts joining us here today to share a little bit more about their different roles and some of the programs that they have in place. So, ladies, thank you for joining us.
Hello, thanks for having me. So I am Jen Mathistad, and I am the VP of Retail Sales Supervision at Pioneer Bank. So that means that I get to supervise our tellers and our personal bankers. But I've been in lots of different roles since I've been with Pioneer Bank, 8 years tomorrow. And so I've been in mortgage lending, I've been in consumer lending, I helped with account openings, I've run teller transactions, so kind of a jack of all trades. So this is Sarah Albers. You want to do a little intro?
Sure. I am a personal banker in Mapleton at Pioneer Bank. I've been there since 2019. I am a associates in arts business concentration major since 2019. I do account openings, account changes, make sure the customer's all set up.
And Jasmine.
I'm Jasmine. I don't have a microphone, so hopefully you can hear me. I've been with Pioneer Bank for 5 years now. I have a total of 8 years in banking. I do a little bit of everything. I open accounts, I do a little bit of consumer lending, and I've had various positions within Pioneer Bank. So I'm a jack of all trades. I do a little bit of everything.
Very good. So one of the benefits of a consumer bank like Pioneer Bank is that we really focus on the relationships that we have with our customers. And whether that's a business or it's an individual, we want to know what is it you're after within your banking relationship? What are your needs and how can we help fulfill those needs? So we actually use a retail sales process to sit down with each individual or each business as they come to us. So that we can ask the questions, we can have the conversation, and we can understand how we can better serve you and how we can make this a mutually beneficial arrangement. And so as we move into more of a global workforce, as you guys are very well aware, that does come with some different changes in how that conversation sounds. And some of the things we have to worry about are some additional documentation pieces and things that we need to collect to ensure that our compliance department is happy. And we've got all of the boxes checked as we're working through our process. And so the next slide is going to give us some different, depending on their status, their resident status, some different areas or documentation that we would want to collect.
So up here you'll see just various status. For example, if you're a U.S. citizen, we'd obviously need your social security number, passport or state ID, your driver's license. Things are a little bit different if you're a resident alien. We would need a copy of your green card along with a passport, typically, or a state ID, whichever you do have. And then with the non-resident alien, we would need a passport or a state ID, and along with that, something that's a little bit different is we need to have a W8bn Form completed. This is a preview of what the W8bn Form looks like, and it could be a form just found out on the internet that we need completed at the time of account opening.
That's one of those documents that we find very helpful because we know that the employers come here for a short period of time in some cases, and they come here to work, and they want to work hard, they want to work as long of hours as they can, and that's what you guys want too. So our goal as a community bank is to make sure that we're making you happy as their employer. So gathering as much information ahead of time is very helpful. The W8bn Form is one of those forms that has name, address, ITIN or social security number included on there, and various other pieces of information in regards to your employee. So gathering that information and documentation from you ahead of time is an opportunity for us to be able to get some of the documentation completed and understand what we can do ahead of time to save you guys and your employees some time. some different things to think about. So that kind of leads into open communication is always key for a good relationship, right? And so planning ahead. So we can do, don't tell my compliance officer, but almost anything, as long as we have a plan in place, right? So open communication. We've had employers come into our St. James location and say, I've got 25 employees coming in. We want to be able to open accounts. This is the time frame we've got them in. We have applied for the Social Security cards, but haven't received them yet. What are our options? So as a community bank, we have the option of being a little bit more flexible. We still have all the regulations and everything that we have to take care of, make sure that we're fitting. But as long as we have a plan in place and we've got the trust and the relationship between us and the employer, we're really willing to work with your employees and make sure that as soon as those Social Security cards come in, we get copies of those for each of your employees. And so I know that you guys would work with your banks very well with that. So time is valuable. We talked a little bit about that. Is an interpreter required? So some of our locations do have Spanish-speaking employees, bilingual employees, but not all of our locations. So if you do need an interpreter, we have the option. We could transport somebody from another location, or maybe you have somebody available that could come in and interpret for us. Sarah, do you want to share your recent experience?
Sure. So we had a group of 4 girls that came in to set up an account. They brought their own interpreter. We ended up going into an office, all 4 of us, 2 bankers and 2 employers that they were hired for. And we sat there and we discussed what type of account was good for them. We helped them fill out their W8bn, and we just set them up with the correct account. Afterwards, we kind of dispersed and had 2 and 2 with each personal banker, and the interpreter was there to ask the little questions that we had to keep going.
So another option that we would have is because of COVID, we realized how flexible we can really be as far as remote work, remote access, and things like that. Programs like DocuSign or Adobe Sign, those help us to be able to work remotely, which also means there's a potential for an opportunity for us to come to you. So let's say you've got 30 people coming in or 5 people coming in, and you're going to be working with them about benefits and Department of Labor issues or whatever it might be, OSHA requirements. If there is a day where you know all of your people are going to be in one spot and it's convenient for you, if we know ahead of time, there's opportunity for us to come with our equipment to be able to collect electronic signatures, collect and get those accounts set up so that tomorrow they can be on the job site. So tomorrow they can be working and making everybody happy. So another really cool thing that we can work for and make an opportunity there.
Another common question for us during account openings is money transfers. A lot of these employees are looking at sending money back to their countries. We have different options. Within Pioneer Bank, we offer the most common product, which is a wire. There is fees with the wire, but that is probably one of our most popular options at the bank. We also have reloadable travel cards, and those are pretty popular. The customer can stop into the bank. We would gather some information, and they'd be able to reload that card monthly or weekly as needed, and someone back in their country could have the card with the customer reloading it at the bank for a very minimal charge.
And the nice thing with that is it functions just like a debit card. So it's got an EMV chip, so it's secure. It's instant as far as any balance reloads onto that card. So there's a minimal fee for the purchase and a minimal fee anytime they add cash to it. But if we add cash in Mapleton, Minnesota, and maybe they're in Mexico City, their family that's using the card, it'll be instantaneous. They can also have options of doing it online. They can call in if they're on the job site and they want to add, they can't come into the bank, we can also help them over the phone with that as well. One other thing that's come to our attention is sometimes it's necessary to have multiple party accounts. And so what that means is you have your primary owner on the account, and then what if they're working long hours? What if they don't have, they work on Saturdays, If they can't get in before noon, how are they going to get there to cash their checks? How are they going to get there to get cash out, things like that. Sometimes we found that there are authorized signers added to the account so that they can act on behalf of the owner. They can't cash their own payroll checks, they can't deposit their own payroll checks, but they have the option of acting on the behalf of that owner on the account. So if they're on the job site all day, maybe they're a job site foreman or somebody from the office staff can come to the bank, they're an authorized signer on their account, and then they would be able to act on behalf. They'd be able to cash their check, take cash out, different pieces like that. So something to think about. It's not necessarily anything that we're saying has to be done, but it certainly can work in their favor depending on the situation, the circumstances. And then debit card usage. So I'm not sure how many of you guys have ever had any fraud on your debit card, but one of the things that we need to make sure we're keeping in mind is typical patterns of behavior and usage of their debit card. So if they are an employee who's here for only a certain period of time, we want to talk about, will you be making international purchases with your debit card? What are the average amounts that you're going to be using for that debit card purchase? If you are transferring back to your native country for a portion of the year, will you be using your debit card regularly while you're there, or will it remain dormant while you're not in the United States? So some of those things are conversations we have with the customers as well. So we can create that pattern of behavior and make notes on their debit cards so that if they're trying to make a purchase late in the evening, they're not going to get a fraud alert on their card. So we can make some of those notes and then help with that transaction go a little bit smoother too. Okay. What questions do you have? Yes.
So I know that when I open accounts for our foreign workers, they always tell them, make sure they close it before they go back, because it's really difficult for them to close their account from South America. Why is that? Why can't they close them online?
So we want to verify the identity of the person who's intending to close the account. Are there fees is there funds remaining in the account? That might be something that they would potentially look at. How are we going to transfer any remaining funds within that account to the new account, wherever they are. We also have a closing account checklist, so we want to go through and we want to figure out are there any additional ACHs or pending check items, and you may not use checks on these accounts, but so different things to think about as we're going through, if there's any automatic transfers that we just go through anytime we're closing an account. So I guess I probably haven't necessarily ever had anybody that we've turned away from opening or closing an account, but we probably would still go through those same steps, and then we would want to probably get a signature on that closing account checklist. And those are things we can do through DocuSign or Adobe Sign and really make it easily accessible regardless of where you're at.
Seems no matter how many times we tell them, now make sure you close your account before you go back. About half of them don't. And then,
yeah. And that brings up a really good point too about minimum balances. So depending on account types, you might have a minimum balance they'd want to keep in their account. So where you might want to transfer, I'll keep $100 here for spending money for the week. The rest is going to go back to help my family. Maybe you're in an account that requires $200 be left in there. So that's part of our conversation too when we're deciding what type of account. We keep that in mind on how they're using the account, how often they're making transfers out of the account, so that we really get them set up with the right type of account. Depending on if the employee is going to be coming back next year. So maybe they're only here for 7 or 8 months and then they come back, 4 months later. We have the option of leaving the account open during that time as well, and then that saves times next year. If they choose not to come back next year, we can deal with that at that point too. But good question. Yeah.
It's kind of on the same line, but we've had some employees that we've terminated that won't come back.
Okay.
And their accounts obviously are still active because we're receiving bank statements. Is
Okay.
there a way to take care of any of that?
Yes, I will give you my business card. And yep, absolutely. So yeah, so perfect example. So if there are funds remaining in the account, we'll take a look at how much is remaining, and then we can look at communication, and if there's a way for us to be able to communicate with that person, we'll certainly try to do that. If we absolutely have no reason to think that they're going to come back, we probably would leave the account on a dormant status, which means that it's better protected if nobody anticipates using it. But then it also, after a certain period of time, would go back to the state of Minnesota as unclaimed property. And then the funds would sit there if we can't figure out a way to get it to them.
I would just like to stop keeping bank statements.
Yeah. Yep. What other questions? Yeah.
Is there a way for a business to make a relationship with the bank that's closest to them, even if their employee doesn't have an account with you, that they can cash that check? Because often they're not looking to have a big account. They just want to get their money, and they're not paid in cash. They're paid in check. But
Yeah. Props to this front row. I mean, you guys really showed up today. So great question. Yes, absolutely. So if you bank with Pioneer Bank and your payroll checks are written on Pioneer Bank, we will cash those checks for your employees, and they don't have to have an account with us. We would collect identification from them. It has to be current ID, and we would collect a fingerprint so that we've got all of that documentation. If the check isn't written on a Pioneer Bank account, we would recommend they go to wherever the check is written on. So whichever bank that payroll account is from. You could check with other banks to see if they would be willing to cash. But then again, it comes down to relationship. So we've got a situation where we have a part of a relationship with an employer. We're continuing to work through and hoping to get the full relationship, but during that time period where we're earning their trust and we're working together, we're willing to make an exception. We have some of their accounts, we're working on getting them all, and we'll work on that communication and that willingness to cash those payroll checks even if they're not on us. Yeah. Okay. Yes?
I'm curious about with international transfers, how your services are different from like Western Union.
Yeah, so it's just a different type of transfer. So Western Union was also one that we had talked about and is widely used. There's another version of, sounds similar to Western Union. I've never used it myself. But Daisy, who was supposed to be here with us, was informing us. She's used Xoom, which is actually XOOM, to transfer money to her family down in Mexico. And very similar, where you pick a window where your family member or your friend is going to be going to pick up that money. You identify which window it is. You get their name exactly as it is on the identification that they're going to be using. And then it's as easy as you give them the money at this window, and it shows up at that window instantaneous as well. So those are a couple of different options. The wire transfer is something that's also instant, but there are fees associated with the wire transfer as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's tough to tell a story if you don't know the whole story, right? It seems so easy. Why don't people have green cards, right? We don't really truly understand, and we don't know what we don't know. And at the first event, we had Victor Martinez share his story, and it really connected well. I think we often forget that we once too had a path that was very much like the global workforce and from different countries. And so we're excited to continue on with the tradition of showcasing a visa worker and another TN visa worker, one of which who also was taught and a part of the same department as Victor Martinez down in Mexico. And so employers, if you're thinking about retention, you're thinking about attraction of talent, our next speaker certainly can attest to that and how those relationships continue to thrive even across country borders. I had the pleasure of speaking and meeting with Sergio and learning a little bit more about his story. And we're talking a little bit about what do we showcase? And we're talking about different things about like going to Walmart and what to expect and where's the baked bread? And it's like, well, you have an oven at your house. It's not. And so it's just some of this different cultural and the culture shock of coming to a new country and what to expect, the fear of racism, the fear of the unknown. And so Sergio is joining us from Mexico City, Mexico, where he graduated with his zootechnical veterinary medicine degree at the National Autonomous University in Mexico. Sergio and his girlfriend, now fiance, both came here to the U.S. Together, and Sergio will share that story a little bit more, but both to pursue their careers at Schwartz Farms, where they now have been over the last 2.5 years. Sergio started as a breeding technician and has developed into the department leader, where he manages the breeding function and supervises the staff and operations of the site. And so please give me a warm welcome to Sergio as he tells his story.
Well, I'm Sergio. I'm 29 years old. I born in Mexico City. I arrived the next June. I'm gonna have 3 years. So the next one. Well, this travel started when I finished my college. I planned three different. I had 3 plans. So these 3 different plans. So what can I do in my life? So, and I choose the number 3, and the number 3 was coming to the U.S. So, in my reasons why I come into the U.S. Was because I want to personal growth, and I found that opportunities or vacant jobs here, and also I want to a better life. So. The next, okay. So my first contact was with Victor Martinez. He was my teacher in Mexico. So, and he put me in contact with the Schwartz Farms company. And after that, we start all the interviews to get in the job. So that interview was very clear and efficient because they take the liberty to give me a person to speak Spanish, so that was pretty easy for me. And they tell me everything about this job is gonna be like this or like this, so they very clear. So if too often in the visa, well, Diane tell us how is the process to getting the visa. So it's pretty easy to get the visa. And well, in human resources for Schwartz Farms explain me everything to getting the visa. How can I go to the consulate in Mexico, and they give me all the paperwork to get the visa. So, next one. Okay. Before coming to the U.S., the human resources of Schwartz Farms, they take the liberty to get me a living place. They was in charge of looking and processing the lease, and also they take the liberty what kind of activities can I do after work, because after work everybody have a life, but in my example, I don't have a life because when I arrive here, you can speak the English languages, so you do not know any other person. Do you not have friends? So it's hard because you start feeling loneliness. So and they give me when you arrive to US, you can do maybe and practice your fishing. You are fishing in Mexico? Oh no. Well, you can practice here in the U.S. Especially in Minnesota, we have the Thousand Lakes to practice the fishing. So you can do okay, thank you. And also you can then what about the parks? What about the church? What about this? What about that? Okay, you can practice everything. You can you're gonna be part of the new community. So you. Maybe you have a fears, but don't worry. The community is very friendly in Minnesota, so just coming to enjoy. Okay. My first days, well, Garrett tell us, the shock cultures start. I was very excited, to know how is the culture. I mean, for example, the new holidays, because here in U.S., for example, your independence is in 4th July. In Mexico, it's in September 5th. No, May 5. Oh, Cinco de Mayo, because all the Americans tell me, hey, happy Cinco de Mayo. Okay, why? What is that? Okay, thank you, but we in Mexico, we do not celebrate Cinco de Mayo in Mexico. Well, it's not a big deal. Well, and also I was very excited because I want to start learn English. So when I arrived here, I was very excited, and also I was very excited learn about my workplace. My partners, my duties, my new duties. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and my worries and my first day was how do I get my driver license? Because I know the human resources tell me, okay, the little delay you're gonna have is you need to drive a lot, because the distance, for example, to go to the grocery stores is you have a small grocery stores in your town, but if you want any other stuff, maybe you can buy in your grocery store or your town. You need to go to the Walmart. So in the Walmart nearest of the for your town is 40 miles. So you need to drive. Oh, okay. So that is my principal worry. Okay, how do I get my driver's license? And they told me, okay, this is the driver's manual. So and you need to study. Okay. But you never told me, okay, the exam is very hard, so you need to pay attention a lot. Yeah, that is true, And they tell me that the best part was, okay, the exam gonna be in Spanish, but this Spanish is not correctly, so sometimes it's a little hard, try to figure what can I say in that question. Well. And also, when I arrived here, I saw a lot of news, about the stereotypes. So I was very worried to suffer any type of stereotype like racism or maybe the other person think about me. Oh, this is Mexican, maybe. It's lazy or something like that, or drink a lot of tequila, but we don't have. I am not like typical stereotype. So, and what I liked of when I arrived here to U.S., what I liked my community was the security and the city service. For example, the water in Mexico, you can drink water direct of the. How to say the tap, the tap. So, and here, that was my first question with the human resource. Hey, can I drink for the tap? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, you can do it. And she told me that is funny because everybody, when you arrive, everybody asks me the same question. Can I drink about the direct of the valve? Yeah, you can do it. Okay, but that I love it. So, and the kidness people and the landscapes and wildlife, like rabbits, deers, and all that stuff, and I love it. Yeah. Okay. Well, and in particular in my job, I love it. They take the liberty to send me a little text the first day, so that made me feel value. So that made me forced to, or that strong to go to the job with all the energy. So and also they take they make events, like for example the picture on the top is a golf day. So we do a golf day every year. So all the farms in Minnesota go and play golf, and and confidence. Yeah. Then okay. Well, what I like less, the transfer distance are very long, so I don't custom yet. So, and there is not public transportation in the towns, so that is a little problem in the first days. And the winter is very long sometimes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In the first days are difficult because there is a feeling loneliness. So, okay. And well, and for me, that is the decision to come into the U.S. I never. Well, I love it. I never. If anybody tell me you can choose again, do you want go again in U.S.? Okay, yeah, because that decision changed my life. So, and that's it. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Eventually, when I take my vacation, I go to visit them. But usually, I use the social medias and like Skype or WhatsApp. I know here in US it's not common to use the WhatsApp to communicate. So I think usually use here the text, but in Mexico we use a lot the WhatsApp. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What can a business do better to bring people like you here, and what could a community do to help bring people like you here?
Little details like this one that make me feel very good. So I think if you take the liberty or or spend a little time for your employee, that makes the difference, And yeah, that is an example, but all these little details that make a difference, because you feel value for the company. So, and if you feel value to the company, and for example, I have partners in Mexico. They tell me, "Hey, how do you get your job?" Because you look like in your picture very happy. So, how do you do that? No, okay. In my company, if you want, I can share the contact. No, you can apply for the job. So if all that stuff, if I feel good, I can share with other partners. And that partners, they're gonna share with other partners. So. Okay. Well, if you don't have more questions, thank you for your time.
I think about something that employers can do tomorrow to make their employees' experience a little bit better, especially during the wintertime. Spend $250 and get them a remote start. They're going to go through the work. They're going to pass their driver's license. Spend $250. Let them get into a warm car, because that makes Minnesota winters all the better. So in that first session that we had in October, Joe McCabe talked about, again, the experience of St. James and Medelia and how it hasn't always been easy. And a group of women initially got together and said, enough is enough. What we have here is special. We need to embrace the change. We need to welcome new cultures, provide a welcoming community. And so today we have Sue Harris, currently a community director for the St. James. And Sue Harris was a part of that inaugural conversation with Uniting Cultures about how can we do better. And I'll let Sue tell more of that story. She's really going to share her experiences as an organizational leader of the Uniting Cultures and how communities can find opportunities and challenges, how we can host these welcoming ceremonies and celebrations to really showcase our appreciation and welcome them. And so please help me welcome Sue Harris.
How lucky am I? I get to close this thing out. So I have got my clock here, and I know 5 o'clock, so I talk fast. So anyway, thinking about all of this and processing, I'm so glad I came because it's been a fabulous afternoon. The circle is small in southern Minnesota. Diane and I shared a room when we had our second children together, so I know Joe, he's got relationships. And Jim, his wife, is my partner and one of the biggest champions in St. James. Wes Beck and his wife and Paul and I are going on a vacation together. Jen from Pioneer Bank. I mean, this is small, rural, southern Minnesota. We are connected. And best of all, this piece that I'm sharing this afternoon has been part of something that I worked with Allie on. And so the front part of all of this, because I only had a half an hour and we did this for an hour, I had to chop a lot out. So I'm only telling our particular story. And my champion, Pat, is gone. She is actually bringing greetings from Germany. So we couldn't bring her in from Germany this afternoon, so I'm your girl. And I am proud to be from southern Minnesota. I grew up on a farm, and corn and soybeans and pork is also my background. And the one thing that I know about being part of a small community is I have lived in St. James for 40 years, and I'm still a newcomer. And some of you laugh, but if you're from a small community, you were born and raised, or you're a newcomer. And the newcomers kind of generally hang together, and those that are born and raised, you're all laughing. This is what small town is kind of about. And so I am not originally I am from actually Donnell and Sherburne in Martin County. So my community is St. James, Minnesota. And I've lived there. I got married, and I've lived there for over 40 years. And so it's a railroad town, and it's a rural town. And food processing and agriculture is our name of the game. But we've had a shift. And that shift happened, 30, 40 years ago. And the reason being is economic development. Our food processing plants did not have the labor force they needed. And so it's interesting as we've looked through why people come and the reasons for immigration. Well, the first folks that came were from McAllen, Texas. And our plant in Whatwat County looked for labor force, had a connection with McAllen, Texas, and brought up young men. The next wave is then families came. We had migrant status and a movement, and then they made their home, and they're staying. So we are now in community 38%, and in our schools we're well over now 50% in our schools are Latinx population. That shift and that change affects the entire community. And so how then? We can embrace that change and say this is good. And how are we going to manage it? And how are we going to celebrate it? Or we can push against it. And in St. James, we've had a little bit of both. So this is the story of St. James and how we've moved forward. So in the late 90s, in fact, Dave Krause was one of the people that helped to fund the Spirit of St. James. We were demographically changing, and so the business community hired a consultant, and we came into St. James. We took 100 people to Fairmont, and we processed a whole day of what's going on in our community and what can we do to manage that. And one of the things that came out of that was the Unity Unidad group. Well, the Unity Unidad group, guess who was on that group? It was all the white people. We were not at that point in history where we were connected. We had the Latinx community, and we had the white community, and they were living in these parallel universes where they were not connecting and talking with each other, only the kids at school. But it was a start. We had one Latinx business, and they came in for a brief time, and we tried. And we had some focus groups, and we listened, but it was the start. In the mid-2000s then, and what I'm hoping to tell you is that it isn't just one thing that St. James has done. It's been layering of thing after thing after thing till you get to a tipping point that it makes the difference. So in the mid-2000s, we were part of our Horizons poverty reduction because we're also a low-income community. And I think the slide before showed the free and reduced lunch rates. At that point, there was a decided effort by the poverty reduction through the University of Minnesota, and it was funded through James J. Hill, and that foundation brought this to Minnesota. And we were one of the communities, and we took our Latinx community and paralleled them. We did Leadership Plenty, and we had a whole group that was done all in Spanish, talking about what it means to be a leader, what it means to run an organization, and how to do that. And we had our high school students participate and help to lead. Out of that group, we had a woman who finally, first Latinx person to run for office in St. James, was a part of that group. Our high school student now works for the ACLU and was one of the student leaders for Leadership Plenty. And it was the first time that our Latinx population said, we need a shelter at our trailer park where many of them lived because the kids had to stand in Minnesota winters, and we want them to be sheltered. Our community wrapped around, and that got done. So it was the first time the community responded to red dotting something and then making sure that that happened. So then, what was the tipping point? Well, out of Leadership Plenty, many of the people that took that Leadership Plenty then became part of Convivencia Hispana, which was a group that was engaged with the Latinx population, supporting themselves and being advocacy. Secondly, rhetoric on immigration and border issues is really important for our community, because in our community, I know and care for both people that are documented and are not documented. They're in my schools, they are my friends, and they are my neighbors. And so many people with this negative rhetoric, this is our people and this is our community. And there were many people at that point in time that were upset. And then Region 9 came in, and I believe it's with the YWCA, I believe, is the Forum on Race in the spring of 2017. That forum was a catalyst because when we had the forum, do you want to do something next? And a vast majority of people said yes. And when they said yes, that next step then, Convivencia, we have a group of passionate people that want to do something. This joint meeting, tipping point. Can you go to the next slide? Uniting Cultures was born in 2017. And we created a mission statement, and we became formal about the things that we wanted to do. Acceptance, belonging, community, pride, and ownership. This is where we are. Diversity, it's where we are together. And so that has begun our journey. So, what has Uniting Cultures done? Celebrating the diversity and community, providing educational opportunities to challenge ourselves personally and as a group. Most importantly, we've built relationships. It's relationships that make a difference. And we have not those parallel universes. How do we do things that we can do together so that we can build trust in a relationship and we can hear each other and see each other? Support. Our Uniting Cultures has been extremely supportive, both financially and programmatically, for what Convivencia Hispana wants to do. And we've done a lot of personal growth because diversity and equity starts in my heart and in my thought. And I have been humbled greatly by diversity and equity work, And I have a long way to go in understanding and being a good partner in this diverse world that we are now changing. And then, how do we sustain a group? You have storming, norming, your group is going, and then how do you not let it, this is too important to our community. So how do we sustain it over the long haul? Strategic planning, and then fiscal financial issues. So the challenges. Okay, we're learning in a multicultural environment. What do other people need? We have a different language. We need to do all of our meetings in Spanish and English. And how long does that take? Twice as long. You can't go fast, and I go fast. So it's slowing yourselves down to be able to do and understand how you do formal structures, how you operate meetings, how you do, what ideas and how it flows, and how do you be respectful for differences. The financial, how do you do a community group what doesn't have any money? We really didn't have any money, and it's been an absolute miracle of the support that we have had in the work and the things that we've done. How do you sustain it? How do you focus and prioritize? Because there's all these different things that you can do. And do you have social capital loss? Is it hard? And do you get pushback? Absolutely. Absolutely. None of this is easy. Change is hard. It's hard work for a lot of people. Some people walk into change well, and some people, it is very, very, very challenging. And so have we had pushback? Yes. How do you continue to develop leadership so you don't burn out? And our successes. We've been recognized in St. James as some leadership in that, and that has really been due to a lot. I'd have to just give Pat great credit because she's been our leader and she has brought us forward in a lot of things that have pushed us to do new things. And we, along with Allie, spoke at the National Association for Development Organizations in Portland, Oregon. And they called and wanted to do a national piece on DVD or whatever, so we presented online, and then they put that in their archives to what you can do in community. And what Pat will say is that we may not be doing it well, but we're doing it. And that's the point, is that you have to start, and you have to take the effort to do some things. It isn't about just saying, well, my community's changing and I can't do anything. Yes, we can. It's taking the challenge to move that forward. And some of our successes, the best things, is that I have a whole group of people that, as Pat said, lived in my community, and I never knew them. I never knew they were there. How is it that we live in small communities, and I recognize this, but there's a whole group of people, and particularly the people that might be Latinx or undocumented or what, wonderful people, but I missed that, and I didn't know that. How do you create the avenue of opening that up to building relationships and seeing other people? And what does it mean to belong to your community? Is it if you just look like me? If there are other people, how do we create that sense of belonging, that sense of engagement and participation? And then huge ripple effects. And for some of the work that we've done, for the first time in 25 years, I feel included and a part of the work of this community. How did we miss this whole group of people that didn't feel they had an avenue or a place to be a part? Next slide. So, Uniting Cultures was our forum on race. And thank you. Excellent programming, and it was wonderful. Shocking. This is what our local church is. We had 80 people. But it wasn't just the white people. And that's because Convivencia Hispana, and there was multiple people, helped to bring people. So we had a very diverse group. And that night, over 80 people struggled with those topics and all of this and said, we can't stop here. So we had a sign-up sheet as we left. How many want to come next? We took that challenge down, and Region 9, thank you to Region 9, provided us with ongoing support. So we did strategic planning with some extension educators, and we decided, what do we want to do? So, the next slide. This cultural iceberg, everyone has seen this. So when I think about our work, we did everything at the very beginning that was easy and that was above the line. Holidays, festivals, the literature piece, dress, food, all of this. You'll see that our first start was all above the line. As we've moved through time, we've gone down to deeper, harder, and more engaging and challenging efforts. But if you want to know where to start at the top. So our start was, the next slide, that summer in 2017, Ever Vargas, he is one of our champions, and Ever said, we need a festival to bring us together. Well, we thought, okay, this was July, let's see what we can do for next year. Because as white people, we have finances to raise, we have all of these things that we need to do. He said, no, we want to do it on Mexican Independence Day in September. And this was July. And we're going like, there is no way. But Ever said, yes, we can. And you know what? Yes, we can. We had our first ever multicultural celebration, multicultural fiesta on Mexican Independence Day in September, not on May 5th. We celebrated the ethnic diversity. We had food. And Jim makes German cookies, and we have the Swedish ladies rolling their lefse, and then the people that are down the thing doing pupusas and tacos are coming down and saying, well, that looks a lot like what do you call it, a taco, yeah, whatever, yes, lots of things together. We have food, we have, hi, David. We have Mexican pupusas, or not Mexican, El Salvadorian pupusas, tacos, and Swedish dancers and fiddlers and Aztec dancers. We've tried to do a broad scale of what it means. And if you go to our next thing, is that you put a pin on where you come from, and you can say that we felt included, because this celebration in our community was led and directed by Ever and a lot of us underneath. And it has now been, we started with a few hundred people, and the last one's been well over 1,000 people have been in attendance. So we're planning for next September, so do come to attend our festival in mid-September in St. James. So the next piece is, again, we wanted to learn more about food. So we took all of our churches and said, Sunday, we're going to do a meal. So we did a Salvadorian meal, Mexican, Guatemalan, and Scandinavian on different Sundays. The last Sunday was out at one of the Svedals, and it was a Swedish meal there. The best part, our Latinx folks were helping to serve the Swedish food. And when we had El Salvadorian and Mexican, it was the exact opposite. We were together. We shared our culture. We shared our history. Pushback? Yes, we did. There were some negative comments said about some of the people coming to the various different things. Was it challenging? Yes. Was it delightful and rewarding? Yes. Okay, then telling your story, hearing Sergio's story, hearing our immigration stories. So, and this is our Pat right here, and went together, and over 40 people, we have their stories. We have stories in our book that are from our county of people coming and ICE coming in, separating the family, and family separation, and negative immigration pieces. We have stories of people coming from Sweden at the turn of this century and everything in between. They're all stories, and so we wrote that, and we have a hardcover book, Your Story, My Story, Our Story, that is telling the stories of people that live and breathe in our community. It was a wonderful way, and if you flip to the next slide, I felt that I was a little grain. This is our Marta, and no one really gave importance to myself or my culture. We came from different continents, different situations, but we have something in common that propelled us to be here. And now I feel a part of you. You've heard my story, and I've heard yours. It's huge. It's huge. And our MARTA came as a political asylum. Then we wanted to talk and delve more into this immigration. And we have many people here with the DACA, Deferred Action for Children, and and then citizenship. And the 4 panelists there, they talked about our Sue Moore. Her daughter-in-law is a doctor. It took years. And she's a doctor from another country. It took years for her to gain her citizenship. Citizenship costs a lot of money, and it's extremely challenging. And so for the people in my community, it's not as easy as just saying, well, just go become a citizen and learn the language. All of those things are challenging and huge mountains. And so, and when we heard all about the people that come, they're all the professional people. If you do not have lucky enough in your country to get a degree, but you want to do better by your family, you have absolutely no other options. No other options to be able to come, because it's not easy to come, and there's only a select few that we want to come, and yet our labor needs these people. Our community in St. James, many small rural communities in southern Minnesota are about half the kindergarten population because they've lost population. St. James and Medilia have held their own because we have new people in our community. Hallelujah. Our school is still stable. Our community downtown has changed with businesses. But hallelujah, we're not dying. We're going to flourish because I think and hope we have been able to engage that diversity. Our convivencia Hispana, I am so proud of this group of people. They started in the plant. And our plant, local plant, gives scholarships to students. These people wanted their kids to go on to school and have opportunity. They sold pupusas and did everything they could to raise money. And at the end of the day, they gave more scholarships in our high school, this small group of Latinx people, than even the plant did. Were understanding and concerned about their seniors. So they started our Golden Age, which was a support piece, and this is all of the seniors that are living with their family were isolated and spoke Spanish. Our Wellspring and our Vine people and the nutrition people wrapped around, and they did weekly or twice monthly events to support that. Then, Day of the Dead is a very important celebration. Well, my goodness, our Swedish Lutheran church had Day of the Dead, and our Uniting Cultures showed up to help support that particular activity. There's nothing like having a Day of the Dead at the Swedish Lutheran kind of church. It's pretty awesome. Then our community became the recipient of an Art Place project, and we were the town did a plot of land. What were we going to do with that land? Well, this group was in place to help determine what that plot of land was going to be used. And most recently, the school is the fiscal host for them, so it runs through my office. $20,000 they receive for COVID support and COVID education for immunizations so that our population would have people they trusted to give them public health information about the last 2 years. Next slide. Equity work. Now we're going below the line. We're talking about deeper issues. We did Working Out Loud circles about becoming anti-racist, and we had a fair number of people in groups of 4 to 5 that met over the course of 2 to 3 months to discuss this. And this is one of a very pivotal heart-learning activity for me. We've done an equity summit, and we did it locally. We have regional equity summits, but we did one locally, and thanks to some of our business, including Pioneer Bank, that helped to plan, present, and pay for doing a local equity summit. We took, and we participated in others and brought that programming and did things through community ed. So Pat has done some individual classes as well as others that we've run through community ed. And For those working in schools, we did a social justice scholarship for our high school students that are working and been in community in that particular area. Next slide. Our school, the ripple effects out into community of the work that's happened. Well, in the school, we have started with an equity team among the staff. Our superintendent just wrote for a Teachers of Color grant and received $700,000 to help to fully pay for students of color to become teachers to come back and teach in our schools. And they just wrote for another one and just received another one, and that is for adults in community, another $700,000 to be able that if you're a para staff or if you're someone in community that is past high school age and wants to go back to school and teach, because we need teachers and we need teachers of color. Staff development. Our school has worked on the IDI, which is the Intercultural Developmental Inventory. Number of our staff have taken that, our school board. We have now had a whole year of training and equity training, and we have had a social justice club at school, and our students did a Black Lives Matter rally. And the Black Lives Matter rally in town, we happened to have the Minnesota Teachers of the Year who were circulating the state, and they were asked to speak. So Bukata, many of you know, and St. James was the speaker, and we also had all of the candidates for Minnesota Teacher of the Year speak at our Black Lives Rally that matter in St. James, and it was all organized by our high school students. I'm so proud of our kids. Community education is the fiscal host for Uniting Cultures and Convivencia Hispana, and that we will underwrite and support all of that work. Next slide. Our Rotary Club did white fragility. Jim and I are Rotarians. We lost a Rotarian because of it. Local sponsorships, and thank you to Pioneer Bank, helped to sponsor our local summit. Local churches have done study groups, and our Marta, at my church, she came and spoke as part of a sermon telling her story of being from El Salvador, and all of it was interpreted by her son as part of our Sunday service. Next slide. Uniting Cultures through COVID has been working hand in hand with our backpack, the food giveaway, and the food shelf through all of the COVID. There's many people that have helped to deliver packages and making sure that the food insecure families in our community, that they are wrapped around. Our city has done bilingual publications and signage. They help to plan and support our Equity Summit. Support for Latinx businesses and entrepreneurs, and a handyman certificate, and picking up and how you repair your home, which then worked with Convivencia Hispana to provide the translation for the city for some of those grants. Next slide. So, what's in it and what are we doing currently? Well, currently, thank you to Pat. She wrote a grant, and we're working with the University of Minnesota Morris on a storytelling project. The interesting thing is that if you go to our historical society, where does it start? It starts when the people like me came here. What happened prior to that? Are we understanding and celebrating our indigenous heritage, and where is that at? So this is some of the things that we're wanting to delve into. Pat wrote to the Smithsonian. There was a program that highlighted what small towns are doing as a traveling exhibit coming up, and we got accepted to be a part of a traveling exhibit by the Smithsonian on the work in small towns. A few weeks ago, we have a Ukrainian foreign exchange student. We have a woman from Russia who works at our VA clinic as a physician's assistant. And one of her best friends is from Ukraine, who was down from Alpha, Minnesota, if you know where that's at. And then I work with a gal who is married to a Romanian who works at our hospital as a radiographer. They all spoke about what was happening in Ukraine. And that night in St. James, we were able to raise over $7,000 for Ukrainian relief. We are working on a world sculpture to be placed at the center of our plaza. And this world sculpture, we're hoping to have 23 languages representing community to be in the center of the plaza that was planned and organized with input from our Latinx community to celebrate that you are welcome here in St. James in languages. So we have commissioned that with one of our local metal artists, and we're going to be working on paying for it. Anybody who wants to help pay for it. And so we're working on that, and we're hoping to grand open that at our fiesta this fall. And I'm very excited. I work in the high school, and we have a Pay It Forward trip. And our Pay It Forward trip is our high school students, and I work with Maple River, LCWM, and Truman, St. James, and Medilia schools, and we're taking high school students on this trip. And this time we're doing an Indigenous persons trip, and we are going to go to St. Peter, and we're going to the hanging site here in Mankato. We're going to be going to the Lower Sioux Agency, and we're going to celebrate the powwow with them in June and learn. We are going to go out to Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota, and we are going to end up at Crazy Horse and the museum out in Rapid City in June. So we are highlighting, and that kind of parallels understanding and going deeper into other Indigenous stories. So you just got to do it. It's start, and it is about layering. It isn't about just one thing, but it's about multiple things. And you build on past initiatives. You start and you keep going. Ask and engage, and know that we have to understand and do personal work to understand our cultural lens and others so we can recognize and be respectful of others. And plan. We had lots of help with strategic planning, vision, missioning, prioritizing, all of those kinds of kinds of things in order to formalize our work. And we need to continue to engage leadership, and leadership changes. And that's something that's ongoing. So it's not a one done. Relationships are ongoing. And understand that you will have gatekeepers, that people that will keep things from happening. And you need a group of champions. This is not one or two people, but it was the tipping point of enough people that wanted and passionately believed that we could make our community better by engaging all people. And make those connections, and then this outside partnerships. And so I wanted to give credit to where credit is due. So the next slide is all of the people that have poured into since Uniting Culture started, where we have received not just, we've had great support internally in community. This is our external partners. Region 9. Hats off to Region 9. Without their beginning and their work with the Y, making this was the catalyst on this particular start. And their work with extension and civic engagement, all of our training and our strategic planning, it was done, many of it by Toby Spanier, who was part of all of these projects. RSDP, we've had multiple grants and support from that piece. Blandon is in fact, some of the money that we are still working off of is Blandon support dollars, working in partnership with these others. We have had $20,000 for Uniting Cultures from the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation. FREC, and that's another training and support and education. Minnesota Humanities gave us a grant and helped to fund our book. Prairie Lakes Regional Arts Council, all of the fast entertainment, or the great multiple pieces of it, $7,000 is coming from the Prairie Lakes Regional Arts Council, and then money that we couldn't spend during the COVID, we are now putting into our sculpture. And MSU Diversity and Equity at the college, they're helping to pay for our Fiesta advertising. To name a few, once you start, this work is new, it's exciting, and it's happening all over. Thank heavens. We have a diverse nation, a diverse world. We have many people, and if we all work together, that partnership, we can be great because we recognize the talents and abilities of all people rather than just the ones that have lived and worked and been in our little corner. There's more that we can do, and how do we celebrate that? It's a team. And my last story is, this is what's happened. If you want to flip to the next slide. To me, this is one of the most pivotal things that has happened in St. James. And this is what happens when you invest in people. Laura Mavarshian was a young girl, and her parents came to our county, undocumented, for a job to work in our food processing plants. She felt that coming to St. James, her track coach, her music teacher, this woman took her parents and helped to teach them English. This woman gave her a job. This person helped them with food insecurity. All of these people across, and these are her uncles, gave her a grounding that she never would have had. She left, and their family left our community. She has become very successful and now lives in Atlanta, Georgia. Her commitment to what this community gave to her, that she wanted to give back to St. James. So she wanted to commission a mural, and this stands at the corner of the intersection of our town. She paid $40,000 to have another undocumented female, to actually two, both Pam and Amy came to St. James as undocumented females. And they painted this mural to celebrate what St. James had done for them. And these people, this is our Ever, this is our Marta, this was our first school board, Latinx school board. These are our people. This is our Spanish teacher at school. And then this represents our wrestling programs, our kids programs, our city, our bakery, our fire department, all the things that are in our community, all done and supported. And the coolest thing is that Laura, after 30 or 40 years living a successful life in Atlanta, Georgia, chose to give back to St. James. But 2 weeks after this mural, this is our Laura, this was commissioned, she gained citizenship. Our undocumented and our people in our community are well worth knowing, and they have gifts untold to give. How do we celebrate who we are and to be able to move us forward? So thank you, and I challenge you. We don't have all the answers, but at least we're willing to take a step to try. Thank you.
Sticking around for happy hour?
Mm-hmm. Well, as long as Jim does.
I'm the driver.
Yeah, that's right.
I think we'll open it up almost more of a forum. I'd ask the speakers that are able to stick around. We'll grab our beer, wine, cheese, meat, crackers, and we'll sit down and let's continue the conversation and share some more stories. You know, I have a few more notes, and I have to take the privilege to share some of this. Thinking about Sue as she tells the story, and may we all have the enthusiasm and energy that Sue has when it comes to our organizations. Yeah, may we all try to carry that enthusiasm because it radiates, and when it radiates that positivity, it just makes you want to get up and do something. You know, we refer in the food and ag space about a lot of NIMBYs, not in my backyard. How can we say there's a place right here in our community, in our town, in your backyard? What are you willing to do? In business, there's a term, innovate or die, right? If you're not making money, it's going to be really hard to stay in business. How can we think of our communities as adapt and thrive, right? There's a lot of changes. Now, a lot of these changes are difficult. You lose a Rotary member over it, right? I think it's now at that time in that inflection point in our society to where let's get rid of those members, right? Let's take that next step. They'll learn. Perhaps they'll be back. Hopefully they'll be back. But I don't think there's a place now in our communities, in our organizations, to accept racism and the lack of perspective to better the community. Think about those in your community, in your organization, in your network that missed out from this conversation today. We'll have the video. I need your name and email. We'll send videos out and we'll have them on the GreenSeam website for those to share. But if I don't know who you are or I don't have your information, I can't get a hold of you. So think about those people that need to be in that next room. We'll work on a next date. Need your feedback. What should we dive deeper into? Now that we've had 2 sessions, is it now bringing the leaders of business and community leaders together and talking about, hey, businesses, how can we collectively work on something? Communities, how can we collectively work on something? We're not doing this alone. We're in this together. And thank you again, Sue, for that information. And Just another heartfelt thank you. This is really cool.
It changes people's lives. A job and being able to pay for your family. It's huge. So thank you.
Thank you to all our speakers.